Welcome back everyone to another video. I'm Chris, and in this video I'm going to do a deep dive into all the different Chaos Demon detachments and why I think they are really good in the meta right now. Hope you enjoy. So I really wanted to make a video talking about all the different new detachments and the demonic detachment, the demonic incursion detachment in Chaos Demons. I think there's some real power in all 5 of the detachments, so I really wanted to go into it, break down like what makes each detachment unique, what makes each detachment really strong in my opinion, and just kind of go from there. And we'll just go through each detachment at a time, go through what strats are good, what units are good in those detachments, and we have a list for each as well, which has been taken from a well-placed in tournament result for each detachment. So without further ado, we're first starting off with the top synergy. So what units are really strong in pretty much all of these? And it comes down to only just a few that are really, you see them within most of these detachments. And that is Plague Bearers. Plague Bearers just having the ability to sticky, 110 points for 20 wounds that are harder to kill than they should be a lot of the time. It's just really good value, and just sticky objectives is such a strong ability to have. It's really important to be able to have access to that. So a lot of the detachments will be using Plague Bearers today. And the other unit, which is also Nurgle, is Nurglings. Now Nurglings are definitely not new to people. Every Chaos Force in general uses Nurglings. They're just great infiltrators. The -1 to hit aura is incredible. And just everything that they just do really well. Full 40 points. They infiltrate, so they stop scouts, they stop other infiltrators. They have the minus to hit aura. They're just really good, very good value. So those 2 units, you'll see them occurring in quite a few of these different detachments. The other things, there's greater demons in pretty much all these in all these detachments. If I'm referring to a greater demon, I also might refer to like the named one, but I might just refer to normal greater demons. But the named ones like Kairos and Scarbrand and stuff are all very, very much good value as well, but I'll probably just refer to all of them as greater demons unless I specifically need to talk about a certain one. Yeah, so those are like the kind of not necessarily the strongest units, but the units that they connect everything together in these detachments. So those kind of units you'll see a lot. But firstly, we do have the demonic incursion detachment. So this is the index. It's had a couple of updates. It's had obviously the 3-inch deep strike's changed, so now it's 6-inch deep strike, but then they've also changed it. They took away the rider that you can't charge, so now it's a 6-inch deep strike that you can charge from, which is pretty unique. It's pretty interesting as well. So usually the old play patterns was you'd send your Bellicor or Greater Demon forward, and then drop the corresponding god's units out from in front of it, and then charge from there. Often you'd see a Bloodthirster run up, and then Scarbrand come out from it, and they'd both charge, and there'd be quite a good combo. Now you don't actually even have to sacrifice that Greater Demon to be able to do this. It makes more units a bit more interesting. Like 10 Bloodletters with an instrument just like can 5-inch charge things because it can deep strike 6 inches away, and then +1 to charge because of the instrument, and then yeah, so that's really consistent charges. Yes, the damage output from Bloodletters without any buffs isn't the greatest, but it's still only just over 100 points for a unit that will clean up 100 points worth of other units. So it's really interesting, kind of just like potential to see this detachment a bit differently now. But there is still 2 main ways you'll see this detachment, and that is the kind of a lot of big things, which is similar to the list that we will be showing off next, which is just a lot of big creatures, a lot of greater demons, soul grinders, that kind of stuff, and then a lot of mission play around it. Lots of stuff that you can pick up, bring down again, and all that kind of stuff to really utilize the detachment itself. But we're not going to dwell on this detachment too much because it's the one most people know about, but just remember that 6-inch deep strike that you can charge from really does change how the army can play a little bit. So just really keep that in mind if you're thinking about building with this. Onto the list, we have 2 Bloodthirsters with no enhancements. We have a Great Unclean with Endless Gift for the extra Feel No Pain, so he's just really, really difficult to deal with. He's great when you put him onto your expansion objective, which is the objective usually off to your left or right. And he just sits there for most of the game, kills things off of it, and it's too hard to kill for your opponent to really have to deal with. So it's a really good like piece in that regard. And also, if you need to, you can always teleport him around if he's needed somewhere else. So you can 6-inch deep stroke him and charge with him. Like there's a lot of utility there. Then we have a unit of Nurglings, as I alluded to before, just great mission playing piece. 2 units of Plague Bearers, the sticky on your home field, being able to teleport them around, sticky or expansion objective, sticky the middle, to really cause your opponent problems. If your opponent doesn't screen out all the objectives and you have one of these in deep stroke, rapid ingressing them on an objective, so then you get sticky at the start of your turn and then running them behind a wall is such a powerful move. It forces your opponent at you, forces that game to kind of play a little bit sooner, and then you have your Bloodthirsters, you have your Great and Clean one. They're ready to hit them back because they have to put something on that objective. Really, really cool like piece of tech that you can do with the Plague Bearers in this detachment. Obviously you can rapid ingress them in everyone, but this one because you can put them back into the reserves, obviously. We have 3 Beasts of Nurgle. Really just, they're a chore to deal with. There are too many wounds. They heal at the end of every phase, so if you're a multi-phase army and you don't have a lot of shooting that can go onto them or a lot of melee, it can be really tricky to actually kill this unit. They are a big base, but because they're singles, you can teleport them around. They're good mission playing pieces. They're good at just holding an objective and forcing action from your opponent. Just really good in a lot of places, and also have a lot of damage to attack. So they also can like punch into Marines and that kind of stuff without doing actually a decent amount of damage. Then we have 2 units of 3 Flamers. I think this list specifically is really trying to make sure that all the screening and small chaff units get deleted as soon as possible, because you have the 2 Bloodthirsters with their breath weapons, the 2 units of Flamers, and then next on the list is the 2 Soul Grinders, and they're both Corn Soul Grinders for the extra Flamers. So there is so much auto-hitting shots in this detachment. It is crazy. There's so many good Overwatch places that you can take. Okay, I'm just going to pick up another 2 or 3 guys out of that squad, or another 2 guys out of that squad. Like, it's just lots of chip damage you can do, with also having the Soul Grinders just be pretty good at shooting in other ways as well. So yeah, so those are the 2 Soul Grinders, and then there is a unit of 3 Screamers. Screamers did get an update. They're still, like, a unit of 3 Screamers is still not going to do that much damage. They are good. They are fast, they're good at doing actions, they're big enough that they can screen out a decent amount of the board, but besides that, they're kind of just that. They're just a mission playing piece that can, again, teleport around to this detachment. Everything can teleport. And yes, the key stratagems you really need to want to know about is like the rarer ones to save can be really big, especially on the Great and Clean ones, and the other big things, the Soul Grinders and Bloodthirsters, can be really good at keeping them alive, especially if your opponent's putting a lot of damage into shots into one specific of the greater demons, just giving it that little bit of extra survivability, and then all you have to do is spike a couple extra 4-ups and you'll be alive, and then you can really catapult the game into your favour. Yeah, again, not going to dwell too much on this detachment. I think really clean list. There's a lot of different ways you can build Demonic Incursion. There's Be'lakor lists, there's 0 Bloodthirster lists, there's lists with Lord of Change and Kairos if you want to play a bit more passive. This is definitely a list that wants to stage aggressively and then force your opponent to come at them and then just kill everything that comes at them. But there's a lot of different ways you could play Demonic Incursion, and I don't think there's actually a necessarily correct way. There's lots of good different uses. On to the next detachment, we have Blood Legion. This detachment is crazy. So the detachment rule gives you, if your opponent ends a move within 6 inches, you get to Blood Surge D6 inches towards that unit. What is a Blood Surge? It's you get to move a number of inches equal to D6 towards them. And if you end an engagement range, you can. You can end an engagement range, and then you obviously will fight in the fight phase. Really great mechanic for like primary denial. Putting units in the terrain pieces and then forcing them, well, if you want to come onto this objective to take it from me, I have a chance of blood surging. And you also really want to make sure you double up units on objectives, or within 6 of that 6 area cone, so that if your opponent goes onto it, you have multiple chances to blood surge. You really want to capitalize on that ability as much as possible to really deter your opponent away from getting on your objectives, which is giving you more primary, giving you that primary control. Whilst you're also trying to pressure them off theirs because you have an advance and charge strat. You have all this kind of different like utility to kind of like pressure them while kind of securing your side. It's definitely an army that wants to get to like turn 3 and then all in your opponent. Well, there'll be times when it's early, obviously, but like you want to get to a point and you'll be like, okay, I'm just going to send everything. Because your army isn't that durable, all your units actually die pretty quickly. The Bloodthirst is the most durable thing, and it's one of the least durable greater demons. So like, you have to play in a way that you can make most use out of your limited durability, but incredible damage. With the Rendmasters to get those extra stacking buffs, and remember the Rendmasters can stack on each other, so you can get multiple instances of +1 damage. Becomes really punishing, and you can make your units hit so incredibly hard. But they don't actually hit that hard without the Rendmasters. So again, if you're playing against Blood Legion, try and target those Rendmasters, and if you're playing with Blood Legion, make sure you keep your Rendmasters as safe as possible until you really need them, because it's better to keep them safer for a bit longer and then have them for that turn where you're like, cool, I'm going to be sending everything forward, than to, oh, I'm going to sacrifice it so I can kill this one unit. It's probably not worth your time in that regard, obviously depending on the unit. But let's go straight into the list then. The list starts off with a Bloodmaster with Brazen Maw. This guy attaches to one of the Bloodletter units. The Brazen Maw gives +2 to your charge. So with the Bloodletters, +1 to charge from the icon. Obviously in this list it doesn't have the icon and the thing. Since I was screenshotting from the app, I tried to keep the boxes as small as possible, so I tried to not add those things, but obviously the free upgrades take the icon and banner and stuff like that. So Bloodmaster with one of the Bloodletter units. Then we have a Bloodthirster with Fury's Cage. This enhancement is absolutely bonkers. Taking some mortal wounds, yes, so you are hurting yourself, but getting full hit and wound rerolls, absolutely insane. Bloodthirsters can be a little inconsistent at times, and like in the Demonic Incursion detachment, it's like, you kind of like, you're risking a little bit if you just send a Bloodthirster in. But this Bloodthirster, the Blood Legion Bloodthirster with Fury's Cage, absolutely minces pretty much anything that it's in combat with. It's really, really powerful piece, but because you're going to be hurting yourself, after its first or second use, if it doesn't get killed the first time you send it in, the second time it's going to be pretty weak because you've taken 2d3 mortal wounds, you would have been shot at, like, it's, you're playing around a little bit more with the, okay, I'm going to use it aggressively, but only one or two times, whereas the other Bloodthirsters might stick around a little bit longer because they've got a couple more wounds. Now we have the Rendmasters on Bloodthrones. These are the guys that give that added damage to your units. So these guys are really important. They are on big bases, so you do have to hide them pretty carefully. But remember, everything in Demons has deep strike, so you can just leave one in reserve, have one on the board if you want, or leave both in reserve. Bring them down when you need them. And it's just trying to find the pacing on when you need to go all in. Because the Rendmasters you don't want to send in before you need them, but if you send them in too late and you don't hit hard enough early, then you might get capitalized. Again, you're not durable. So it's really a balancing act. I think that's part of the hardest part of this detachment, is balancing when to go all in, when to send it, when to stay back and stay reserved. Next we have Skulltaker, who can go with the other Bloodletter unit, or he can just go on himself. He's a pretty good little character to be on his own. If your opponent doesn't have very much good screening, you could also just rapid ingress him somewhere on his own, and he can just go off on a little journey. Or he can go with the Bloodletters. He soups up the Bloodletters and just makes them hit quite a bit harder as well. So I think both options there are fine. I would probably take him with the Bloodletters, but there's definitely options both ways. Next we have the Blue Scribes. Obviously very much not getting any buffs from this detachment, but he is a lone op, and he is the cheapest lone op. And he's also got like a decent, I think he's got a 10-inch move, so he's got some like good utility. He gives you a lone op, so you can just control a point. You can forces your opponent at you. Again, this list wants the opponent to come at them, because you want to get those blood surges, you want to get all that extra movement, you want to get an engagement range if you can. So Blue Skies helps with that. It kind of like can force your opponent to come at you when they don't want to, and stuff like that. So I quite like the addition of the Blue Scribes. We've got the 2 units of Bloodletters. Again, unit of Nurglings, unit of Plague Bearers. These guys are staples in most lists. They're just so good value. 150 point package for both, and you just get a great primary tool and a great denial tool with the Infiltrate from the Nurglings, and even the -1 to hit. It can come up way more often than you think. Then we have only 2 units of 6 Blood Crushers. I think this is actually the correct amount because you have in this list 3 things that want to use the move through walls stratagem that this detachment has. And it's the Bloodthirster and both Blood Crusher units, and even sometimes the Rendmasters just to get an angle to be able to use their ability. So when you have that, like up to 5 units that might want to use this one strat that you can only use once per turn in your movement phase, having that another unit really compiles onto like, oh well, now I have to play differently. And they're not cheap units. Like 220 points isn't expensive, but it's not a cheap unit, you know. It's like it's over 1/10 of your army in one unit that without the stratagem is a lot more immobile than otherwise. But Blood Crushers do hit incredibly hard. They're not as durable as you may think, but they're very good. They hit very hard, especially in this detachment. Get a Rendmaster's buff on them for the added buffs there, and they will kill most things in the game. They can actually get, if they get, you can multi-charge with them quite often and kill 2 things. The next thing in this list we have is 3 units of Flesh Hounds. I really rate the Flesh Hounds in this detachment. They're the units that you can move forward first, get onto the objectives to really force your opponent to come at you. Again, it's what this army list wants to do. But it can also be a great way of setting up little traps for your opponent with the Blood Surges, as you can put a unit of Bloodletters and then a unit of Flesh Hounds. So it forces your opponent into really awkward movements because of where you position your units to not get Blood Surged. Because your opponent can't, will obviously have to risk the odd Blood Surge, and some of them will go your way, some of them won't. But depending on how the terrain is set up and what terrain type you play on, there's some actual places where you can set up on objectives for your opponent that he can't get anyone on the objective without risking a pretty decent, like a 4-up Blood Surge move. Which is really brutal and really, really hard to play around as your opponent. Then we have 1 unit of Seekers. Again, this kind of goes into, you need fast units. Seekers are the fastest thing you can really have access to. They have OC, so they can do all your secondaries for you as well. Same as the Flesh Hounds. You can also set them up on an objective, and then another unit that can Blood Surge next to them, so you can still have a Blood Surge threat, but actually you're holding it with a different unit, so then they have to kill the unit that can't Blood Surge. Yeah. There's a lot of like little tricks you can do in this detachment that really make it play above its weight class. Well, what people assume is its weight class. It is very good at dealing with especially vehicle shooting lists, because they have to come at you, because you can just stay so passive, and you have the Plague Bearers, you have the Nurglings to move block, and then you can just send it all in with the Advance in Charge, the move through walls, and really pressure them. And then if they have to come at you, then they're risking those surge moves to get at you, and if they're tied up, then the vehicles are like, you're only getting that one vehicle to shoot that unit then, and they'll be still -1 to hit. So you can really manipulate the Blood Surge mechanic to your advantage. Obviously there will be games where the Blood Surges, you'll keep rolling 1s in your Blood Surges and it will feel like you just don't have a detachment rule. But on average, you should roll a couple of good ones, a couple of highs, a couple of lows, and everything in between. And it should even out to be a pretty interesting rule that at a higher level, your opponents just won't risk the Blood Surges, or they'll have to risk the odd one. And then if you get it, you capitalize on it, and you can really skew games in your favor from that point onwards. It's definitely a detachment that provides really good player skill, especially in the movement phase and the fight phase. You need to be good at both, and really good at timing when to go all in with your army and understanding your damages into different units. Really cool detachment, really like what it tries to do, and it just plays very differently to a lot of different armies in the game, so it's really interesting. Next we have Legion of Excess. Okay, Legion of Excess is obviously very strong. It's been winning tournaments left, right and centre all over the place. It won Nottingham Open. That's actually the list we're going to be looking at. It's Will Whittaker's list from Nottingham Open. It's very strong, and it's very obviously very strong, right? Legion of Excess gets, the entire army gets 4 back in charge, which is an incredible ability. Slaanesh often had an issue of just getting tied in combat with things that they couldn't kill, like Keepers of Secrets and even Demonettes getting tagged by a Rhino or another transport, and they actually just can't kill transports very well. So it's like, well, you can't do that anymore, because you tag it, it does some damage to you, and then it can fall back and charge you again, and it'll charge off somewhere else. Like, those kind of tricks don't work against Legion of Excess, so the one fundamental flaw for them is kind of fixed. And then compound it on with the absolutely insane seductive gambit ability that you also get in this detachment, which is when you make a charge move, after you've completed that charge move, you can choose to seductive gambit, which means you lose fights first, but you gain full hit and wound rerolls for that unit. So you have to get hit first, but then you hit so much harder back. But like most of the time, you won't be doing this at a time where it's not favorable for you. You get to pick every single time, which is just, in my opinion, absolutely insane. If you're fighting against a shooting army, you just seductive gambit every single time because they're never going to hurt you back. You might lose 1 or 2 demonettes or 1 fiend, but 5 or 6 demonettes or 5 or 6 fiends with full hit and wound rerolls will kill most things in the game, or hurt most things in the game incredibly hard. Especially with access in this attachment to +1 to wound from a strat and an aura of +1 to wound for non-monsters, which is on a Keeper of Secrets usually. It makes them hit so incredibly hard. It's just absolutely insane. So let's go on to Will's list. No, Will Whitaker's list. So this is the Legion of Excess list we have, which has 2 Keeper of Secrets. One of them has False Majesty. They both have the Feel No Pain ability. And then we have Celeste, who I believe went on their own in this list specifically. Just another monster that can just really hit pretty hard. There's also a Trance Weaver here, so depending on what the demonettes need attached to them, you can pick the correct thing to attach to the demonettes for that game. You also have the Mask of Slaanesh, which I think is a really strong unit for this archetype. You can either add extra damage in the fight phase when you need to with +1 to wound in another place, so you have multiple instances of getting +1 to wound to really help that kind of threshold of only having strength 8 to 9 to 10 weapons. With the +1 to wound, you're really upping your average damage into targets. Or you can use her defensively and say, okay, I need this unit to stay alive. Let's make sure they stay alive, -1 to wound. To really kind of flip it both ways, so you can either go be more aggressive or you can be more defensive. Really like this, what the mask adds to this detachment. Then we have a Torment Bringer. Really nice unit here. Has a really good buff. Pardon me. A really big base as well, so it can move block. It hits fairly hard. Has a bunch of attacks. Just a really good piece. Kind of expensive, but it does a lot of work as well for the army. We've got the Trance Weaver that can also be attached to the 1 Demonette unit. Demonettes aren't super strong. Like, they are strong in this attachment, but they also can't take a hit. So the Seductive Gambit is actually less powerful on them because there's not many things. Even 5 Space Marines can kill 5 Demonettes. So if only fighting with 5 Demonettes is not as good as fighting with 10 Demonettes with Fights First. So like, there's a lot of balancing you have to do with the Demonettes, but there's still a lot you can do with the Demonettes. Unit of Plague Bearers, again, like, they're just in most lists. They're very, very good for their points. Then we have 2 units of 6 Fiends and 1 unit of 3 Fiends. 2 units of 6 Fiends, really good, hard-hitting units. You can lose 1 or 2 and still Seductive Gambit to just do absolutely insane amounts of damage. It's just a very strong, very fast unit that can really hit hard. Especially, they really like the +1 to wound because it just really forces so many saves on your opponent. The 3-man unit's a nice little skirmisher. It's cheaper, so it can go off, kill some kind of objective. Pardon me. And then, and then be traded off. It's only 100 points, not the end of the world. Finish off this detachment with a unit of 5 and a unit of 10 Seekers. As you can see, this detachment doesn't really have that many action units or action monkey units that aren't just going to be staging to do more damage. So a unit of 5 Seekers is a nice little addition to kind of have an extra action source, that another unit that can just go onto an objective, do a cleanse for you, go into the center, sacrifice itself, all that kind of stuff. That's a nice, like, 80-point unit is on the more expensive side, but there's not that many cheap demon units, so it's good. Gets all the buffs from the detachment as well, so it can still activate pretty effectively. Then you have a unit of 10 Seekers, which just are actually a decent damage dealer, are so incredibly fast to get the action started. Try and hem your opponent in early, so then the rest of your stuff can get up to the midfield and then pressure your opponent. This list really just wants to put as much pressure as humanly possible on your opponent. It doesn't want to just sit back and play this like little tradie game. It wants to just be all out aggression. It's like the corniest of corn detachments. It's you want to see as much excess flow as you possibly can. It's a really interesting. There's definitely a bit of pacing involved, a little bit, because you can't just send everything at your opponent. Nothing you have is truly that durable. So there's definitely a staging aspect, and then making sure that you can connect with multiple things on the turn that you want to go in. You can't just send one unit every turn. Really cool detachment though. Obviously strong. Has been seeing so much success recently. And really awesome looking lists. On to the next one. We have Plague Legion. This is my personal favourite one. One of my friends got me onto this attachment. He actually ran it at a tournament this past weekend. Did quite well with it. But the list just plays in such a cool way. I played a practice game against him, and it was obnoxious to deal with everything. Being really honest, it's just it's got so you get your detachment rule is you get extra battle shocks. So you get a battle shock at the start of each command phase. An enemy unit within 9 inches, you can force them to do a battle shock. So really nice to have the Nurglings here to be able to infiltrate forward and then start those early game battle shocks. And just having one or two of your units every turn being battle shocked can just really swing how you can play your game as the opponent to Plague Legion. Because like, oh, this Dread Knight, this Custodian's Brick happened to just be battle shocked for no apparent reason. It really can change how you play, because oh, I can't use strats on it, or I can't actually hold this objective, or I can't actually do a cleanse. Like, there's so many things that it can really affect, and just lowers your score by like 5 to 10 points per game, just from your detachment ability, as long as you're using it. So awesome, so awesome. Also has a good accompany of strats. It has an extra movement strat. You can't advance, but it gives you just +5 movement. Absolutely amazing. There's all sorts of really cool things you can do with this detachment. Also has the Canker Blight enhancement, which is when a unit within 9 inches of the bearer fails a battle shock test, they just lose a model instead of take D3 mortal wounds, which is quite good, right? But like, it's so much better than that. What if a lone up, single model unit, fails a leadership, a battle shock check? It just dies. So a Calidus Assassin, the Blue Scribes familiar, all those things, if they fail that leadership check, they just die. Like, it's very, very strong. Or even like a Deathwing Knight or Custodes unit or Terminators, anything like that. Wraith Knight. Not Wraith Knight, Wraith Guard. All those kind of things. Losing a model is actually quite impactful. Like, D3 mortal wounds could be a dead model, but Canker Blight just makes it a dead model. Really, really powerful stuff there. So let's get on to the list then. So we have 2 Great Unclean ones. One of them has Font of Spores, which is a 6-inch aura of +1 AP. Then we have Rodigus himself, who also gives his extra buffs as well. We have a Poxbringer for the additional crits on the Plaguebearer unit. 2 Sloppity Biopipers. One of them has Canker Blight. They give extra movement to the Plaguebearer units, which is really important because this army really needs to move quite fast to be able to activate. Then you have 6 units of Plaguebearers. These things like the meat and bones. You got like 3 big chunks with the 3 great unclean ones. Then you have the 6 Plaguebearer units, and that's the meat and potatoes of your list. Like, that's really all you truly need. And then the last parts of the list: 2 units of Nurglings to activate to screen to activate your battle shocks earlier in the game. 2 units of Beast of Nurgle, 2 units of Beasts of Nurgle. These guys are absolutely atrocious to deal with. They take so much damage to kill 2 of them that it's unreal. And if you only kill 1, yes, it doesn't come back naturally, but there's a 2 CP strat in this detachment to bring a Beast of Nurgle back. So yes, it's expensive being 2 command points, but if you're in combat with one, you finally kill one. So yes, you finally killed it, yes. Then 2 CP comes back to life, and then you're just engaged with it probably for the rest of the game. It can be absolutely punishing. Also, with a bunch of damage to attacks, they're just quite good at dealing with Marines. So you can just send the 2 out, kill a unit of JPI, jump intercessors, and then just go and tag a vehicle, and the vehicle won't probably be able to shoot two to death, and then they just keep healing, keep coming back to life. Absolutely atrocious to deal with. Also just good to hold an objective as well. 2 OC each, just quite nice. Then to finish off the list, we have a unit of plague drones. These guys give rerolls to whatever they shoot, what they shoot at. Everything else gets rerolls against it. It's just a nice way of doing some added damage in this list. The list does kind of kill your opponent with the death of 1,000 cuts. It doesn't have like a sweeping hit like the last couple of detachments have, where Blood Legion and Legion of Excess kind of just can table your opponent in a couple of turns. This list just doesn't do that. This list controls the board. This list puts 2 Great Unclean Ones pressuring the center, 1 out on your side objective, Plague Bearers sending out towards your opponent's objectives constantly, denying their primary, securing your primary, and then being able to do actions with the Plague Drones, the Beasts of Nurgle, and even the Plague Bearer units. The additional movement stratagem is also just it adds inches to your base move, so it means you can move 10 or 11 inches depending if you have a Biopiper, and then still do an action. So you can get onto the center, do a cleanse, go off and do whatever you need to, like a containment, and really get into a good position when you're doing it as well. So there's more movement in the list than you expect. It's harder to deal with than you expect. Having to deal with 2 or 3 Great Unclean Ones and a bunch of Plague Bearers in the same turn can be really difficult to do. You usually have to focus one or the other. A Great Unclean One with the Feel No Pain, 4-up Involt, and just so many wounds, you kind of have to dedicate a lot of shooting to kill it. But it's the same with Plague Bearers. You can't just put some piddly shots into Plague Bearers, because remember, they can res back to life, they can do all sorts of stuff. So it's really difficult to plan on what you need to kill each turn. And shipping units really isn't actually as beneficial as you might think. So yeah, really interesting playstyle here. Really like what how this list came together. It just has so many cool pieces. It's very, very thematic. Everything's Nurgle, which is very pleasing as well. And yeah, really cool list here. Then we have Scintillating Legion. Matt Morosoli just won Adelaide Uprising the past weekend with Scintillating Legion, which is really exciting. This list is definitely the most difficult to pilot because it has fewer pieces than a lot of the other armies, and the pieces don't necessarily do more damage, but they chip away in a really interesting way, and they can play quite an uninteractive game with your opponent. So what does Scintillating Legion do? They get flux dice, and these, well, flux tokens. These flux tokens you can use to do all sorts of different reroll saves, advance rolls, and stuff like that. Okay, but when you use them, they go to your opponent, and then they can use them. So, like, which is like not beneficial in some regards, but it means you can really amplify your damage when you need to. It's like, oh, I need to reroll these 3 wounds to make sure that this unit dies. Cool. Okay, I have 3 flux tokens. I'm just going to roll them and really pressure your opponent with those extra rerolls when you need them. So it's really targeted rerolls, and you only need to reroll as many as you think you need to. So it's really understanding the damage of all your units is going to be vital to making sure that Scintillating Legion is going to be working for you. There's also some really powerful stratagems and enhancements. The stratagem to lift units back into reserve, and if you use a flux token, even if they're in engagement range, they can be lifted back into reserve. It means you can't tie this army down, which is really powerful. One way of kind of dealing with a list like this is just pressuring it with a few units, tagging everything, and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to score my points and you can't really do anything. It's like, well, my 2 most important pieces are just going to get sent back, be repositioned into a more advantageous place, and then kill the things that you try to tag me with. Makes your opponent not even try to tag you, because if they do, then you just do your thing, and then your unit, their unit dies for no reason, and yours is completely safe. So really cool game plan there. The best enhancement is probably Infernal Puppeteer, which is you usually put it on a Lord of Change. You pick a unit, one of your units within 9 inches, and you use them for all range and line of sight for your shooting. So it's kind of like a pseudo indirect. Really powerful in this regard. It's like there's so many points to this. One is it's like indirect. You're going to be sending your units out anyway to score primary and stuff like that. So your Lord of Change can stay behind a piece of terrain and then just shoot out at things staying completely safe, which is just awesome on its own. but you can also use it if you have like a unit of flamers and you're not sure if you're going to kill the whole unit that you're shooting with the flamers at. You can make sure that one of the flamers is within 9 of your Lord of Change, and all of a sudden, well, now you have extra damage into that unit if you need it. It's just very, very powerful, the tricks that you can play with this. With you already got the flux tokens for the extra consistency. There's another stratagem for additions to, I think, 2 or 3 to strength, depending on how many, if you use a flux token or not, which can really, it can make you from wounding on 5 to wounding on 3s. So there's all sorts of really cool like breakpoints list, but you really need to understand how much damage you need to put in a certain place, how much consistency you need there, and really know those breakpoints really, really well. But really, really cool list here, or really cool detachment. Let's go on to the list. So first off, we have a Demon Prince with wings, and he has the Neverblade. So the Demon Prince with wings is a fast flying unit. The Neverblade gives you, I think it's 2 additional strength, an additional attack, and an additional AP. All really good breakpoints for a Demon Prince. Being able to get the extra attack, the extra strength and AP on you already having a good base start means that he can really hit up. He's not a cheap unit, but he also hits really hard, like and incredibly hard in this detachment. A really good piece there. Then we have Kairos and a Lord of Change with Infernal Puppeteer. Kairos having indirect him innately means that both your Lord of Change and Kairos can sit back a bit more safe, and as long as you master how to use Infernal Puppeteer, you can kind of play the entire game fairly hidden, just using your other assets as you need, and kind of keep as many resources alive. If you can keep both Greater Demons alive until the end game, you're in such a powerful position because you have these extra pieces. Next up, we have 2 units of Pink Horrors. Pink Horrors don't gain a huge amount from the detachment here, but they do gain a huge amount from the being able to put it back into reserves even in combat, because tagging Pink Horrors is one way to deal with them. You don't really want to have to kill them because they can split and they become a real pain to deal with. But with that stratagem, pardon me, it makes them really more... you have to just try and kill them, which then with the splitting, it makes them very, very difficult to deal with. So that they're a good just like problem piece for your opponent that they have to deal with. One of the things this list is trying to do is just create so many problems for your opponents while trying to keep a game kind of just chill, just slow it down as much as possible. Just, I'll score my points, deny your points a couple of times, but like really it's just, I'm going to win by a couple of points, and it's going to be, yeah, that kind of style of play. So up after that, we have a unit of Plague Bearers. Again, Plague Bearers are very good. No Nurglings in this detachment. I think that's because they don't want your opponent to have anything to leapfrog off, so they have to care for it. So like, cool, I just won't use them then. So what I mean by that is, if you have Nurglings in the center, your opponent can charge them if they go first to be a bit more pressure on you. What this list doesn't like is a huge amount of early game pressure. You can't, if you overpressure this, yes, it can do a lot. This list can do a lot of damage, but it can do a lot of damage in a couple of places. It doesn't have huge overarching damage, kind of like Legion of Excess, where each unit does incredible amounts of damage. This has like a few units that do good damage, and then a few units that do okay damage. But it has nothing that's like truly like, oh, I can kill everything you send at me. So it kind of has a bit of a weakness there. Next we have 2 Burning Chariots. Again, good flamer, a good little bit of anti-tank as well if you need it. Nice big base, again, so you can move block, you can screen out with them. So it's just all these little extra little utility. You need to really utilize your units really well in this detachment, but you get so much out of them, being able to teleport them, being able to shoot them, being able to puppeteer through them. All these kind of things combo together to really make all these units better than the sum of their parts. Then we have 2 units of flamers. Lots of, again, you get to shoot them, and then you set them up for an overwatch, so you can shoot with them, and then you can overwatch with them into another unit when the other unit ends up moving in your opponent's turn. So you can kind of get double activations out of them, and then if they have to charge them, you can, if they don't kill you, then you can suck them back into the sky and do actions and stuff with them later in the game. So you can keep utilizing those resources quite well. Then we have 2 units of 3 Screamers and 1 unit of 6 Screamers. The 2 units of 3 Screamers are great for that early board, just needing to get things out into objectives, denying your opponent's primary. A lot of the time your opponent will put 1 or 2 OC on a point, put a Screamer on there, and you're just denying their primary. You're not sacrificing a huge unit. You still have all the access to the uppy downy stratagem, all the other stuff that you might need. They got the buff from the data slate, so that it helps them do a little bit more damage. The 6-man can definitely help deal with vehicles and stuff like that with the anti-vehicle 4+ with their bite. And they do pretty well. The 6-man also is great at just tagging up a bunch of your opponent's stuff, and they just can't deal with it too super quickly. So you can delay the game in quite a few different ways with this list, while still doing decent damage whilst delaying. So it's kind of like your game plan is you want to slow the game down as much as possible, and you just want a lot of assets left alive at the end of the game, so that you can score really big turns 4 and 5 and catapult yourself into the lead. Really cool list though. Really good job to Matt Rossoli for winning a 160, 170 person event with the detachment everyone thought was probably the worst out of the Grotmas detachments for Chaos Demons. Really good job. Really awesome list. Really cool concept. Everything seems to work really well together. Australia's Tabletop Network did a stream the entire Adelaide Uprising event, and there is the final is on the YouTube channel, so you can go check that out. The players aren't mic'd up, but the commentary is great, and they kind of talk you through everything in the game. Really good. I really recommend you go and checking that out if you haven't. So, on to my final thoughts. Yeah, and as it says, demons be good, man. Like, I think all those detachments have real play for them. Not a single one of them I think like, oh, like, I'll beat that with any army that I play. I'm like, every one of those offers up different issues that have different solutions in army list and in playing against them, which is insane. If you have a vast Chaos Demon army, you could swap from one to the other depending on meta calls and do really, really well with them. Like if you think, oh, I need to be able to deal with a lot of shooting army lists, Legion of Excess might be, or Blood Legion might be really good options for you. Or I think I just need to be scoring heaps of points because there's a threshold of battle points I need to get into the top running. Well, maybe something more like Plague Legion is more like susceptible for that, because you can just score consistently every game, and you only need to win by a little bit. So you just deny your opponent's primary a little bit and just keep your gameplay really solid. So maybe that kind of detachment could be really strong in that regard. Or if you're just like, I just want to be playing 5 turns of 40k every game, and I just want to beat my opponent with like little player skill improvements and all this kind of stuff, then you have Scintillating Legion to kind of play that way. And then there's also Demonic Incursion, which is kind of just like the good all-comers, and also the best way to play just mass big guys if you want, or the real Blood Crusher spam of the 3x6 Blood Crushers. I still think that's really strong in Demonic Incursion, because you get you can Deep Strike from the Greater Demons, and you can also just 6-inch Deep Strike and still charge now. So you get quite a few options there with the Blood Crusher style list again. So I think those lists are pretty interesting, but I think every single detachment is worth a real look into. So if you enjoyed this video, guys, please consider liking and subscribing. If you want to watch any more of my content, there will be some videos up. There will be one on Sternguard Veterans and how good they are at the game. So if you're interested in looking at Sternguard Veterans, give that a watch. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye!